And good evening, and good evening, and welcome to the Indigo Worship Live show here on Facebook Live. And we're so grateful that you took an opportunity out of your busy schedule to join us tonight on an incredible show we have for Wellness Wednesday. As always, we'd love for you to tag and share this broadcast tonight because we have a very special topic on marriages and the effects of the pandemic on marriages today. So I want you to sit back, relax, and as you're doing so, just don't forget, tag and share. Like our Facebook page here on Indigo Worship Live Show, here on Facebook as well as on Instagram at official Indigo Worship. So right now, I'd like to say thank you and welcome once again. And tonight, for our topic tonight, dealing with marriages, I'd like to welcome my very special guest, Monday Dorsainvil. Monday, thank you so much and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Patrice. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure being here today.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy to have you here because you're actually part of the team with Candor Counseling Firm that
That's
has an
correct.
yes that has an overall um, outreach of clinicians that work with corporations, with family, with children, and your area right now talking about marriages. And so we really are so grateful to have you in the building. Um, our conversation, I wanted to say this for the first time tonight, we are going to actually have a call-in show. And so this will be the very first time that we have done that because I think this topic is very so important for today's conversation, for today's topics, because so many marriages are having little hiccups, I'll call it that way, and some even more than just a hiccup. So we want an opportunity for you to be able to call in and ask your questions of Monday tonight during this show. And we also want to let you know that if you do not want to give your name, you don't have to. You can just say your first name, or you just say you want to just be anonymous to ask your questions. So, and that number tonight, when we open it up, the board open for calls will be 800-240-1384. That's 800-240-1384. So Monday, thank you so much for being here and talking about the effects of the pandemic on our marriages today. And so I want to just turn it over to you and have you just open up the conversation.
Sure. Well, Patrice, if I can begin this way, I want you to imagine with me, um, since the pandemic started. Imagine this person by the name of Jamie. Jamie has found himself feeling down. Um, he watched the news and spent hours watching the news, and he watched and hear about his friends and family being let go from work, and now they are struggling to make ends meet. Jamie watched how just in a blink of an eye, 535,000 people in the United States alone gone just like that. Um, he's watching the reality of life. And Jamie comes home and he looks at his children and he looks at his wife, and for the very first time in his life, he feels helpless. He feels depressed. He feels exhausted. And all he wants to do is just want to stay in bed. He feels sick sometimes. His head hurt and his body aches. And he's trying his very best. But the tremendous effect of the pandemic continued to take a toll on him. Now, before the pandemic, Jamie was very outgoing. He would take his family to church, and he relied on his spirituality to help him cope with, with the struggles of life. But at this particular time, dealing with COVID, he's confused about what he believes. In fact, some of his friends are telling him that this is the mark of the beast. And so he's not too sure what to think or what to pray about. So he's used to hanging out, going out and go to the gym and spend time with his friends to relieve some stress. But now he found himself just wanting to stay at home and barely wants to even pick up the phone to talk to someone. So I want you to take all of that and imagine Jamie now, who is a husband and he has a wife and he has children, and he has to find a way to take all of this negativity, all of this pressure, and all of this stress that's going on in his life and put all that in a ball and still manage to be the husband and be the father at home. But he's trying, and for the most part he's doing the best he can, but he's struggling because now the kids are at home, and the noise is getting too much for him, and the wife is talking to him, but for Jamie, she's nagging all the time, and he just want to take a break, but where could he go? They're telling him stay away. They're telling him 6 feet, and so he found himself at home trying to deal with the different dynamics of having the kids there and the wife there and not having enough time for himself. When I think of Jamie, I think of our situation. This is all of us who have experienced COVID. Um, I believe we have all experienced what the expert call collective trauma, where this pandemic has not only impacted us, but it has impacted the community where we live. It has impacted those we love and the world around us. So, but so as you know, Patrice, um, Patrice, when we look at um, families and husband and wives, if they are already in a crisis and stressful situation, and the dynamic between them um, was positive or negative, the stress is going to impact that relationship in a positive way or in a negative way.
Mhm.
So this is where we are. This is where, if you follow the news and listen to what's happening to marriages around the world, not just in the United States, those who were doing well before COVID continue to do well,
Mhm.
and those who are not doing well before COVID now, are filing for divorce at an alarming rate. So that's where we are right now with this situation.
So we have now put ingredients that would have normally been for a very satisfying meal. I say, a healthy
Mhm.
husband, healthy wife, healthy children, healthy environment, and now we put not only one negative ingredient, but now we're compounded on one or the other.
Mhm.
And with all of that going into the pot, and the majority of what even you described as an example are things out of Jamie's control.
Mhm.
Um, I want to put a pin in Jamie, and now let's look at the wife.
Mhm.
So we have the wife who is accustomed to, her husband, being outside the work, and she may, let's just say, for the sake of this example,
Mhm.
she's a stay-at-home wife and mother,
Mhm.
and which is a full-time job in and of itself.
Mhm.
So she's a nurturer. She's making sure everything is, good at home with the kids, and she's the one that's taking the kids to the doctors and parent teachers and all those sort of things. So she has a routine. So
Mhm.
she's used to Jamie being out, and he's the one that's the hunter gatherer kind of
Mhm.
situation. And so she's the one when he brings home that that catch. She prepares it for the meal. She puts it on the on the table, and they have a good healthy family structure. But now Jamie is home.
Mhm.
Jamie is not working. She sees Jamie changing. The kids are now not in school. So where she would be able to take them to school or to daycare, now they're at home. And now she's finding herself in a role where she's not just a wife and mother. Now she has to be a teacher.
Mhm.
Now she's doing homeschooling. And now we got to worry about masks and keeping things clean. And so this pot is having more ingredients put into it, and the strain. And as one of the things I said, I think in the conversation I had with the clinician Armina Domingue, you have a lid that's shaking,
Mhm.
and at some point there's going to be a pressure release.
Yeah.
And more often than not, that pressure is not going to be a positive release. It's going to be a very massive destruction and a tearing away of relationships. Of the kids are seeing all this going on, so the kids are tense. So everybody is tense in the home.
Mhm.
But the stability of the marriage is the one that really kind of sets the tone of the rhythm of the home. But now there's tension between Jamie, and there's tension behind his wife. There's tension about the fact that you know there's Jamie's out of work now, and what are we going to do about insurance? We used to have insurance, now we can't take the kids, and we got to wear a mask, and the 6 feet apart, and just all those things. And so here we are, 2021, and let's just say it gets to the point where before it was good, but now we're like, you're too close. I'm tired of seeing you.
Yes.
Why is he still here? Why are the kids making noise? And that's on both parts.
Mhm.
So we have, instead of Jamie and his wife coming together and saying, we are a united front. And I heard this example actually a couple of days ago, and I found it interesting in terms of roles.
Mhm.
And I'm actually going to borrow this from another clinician that I heard this from. She was talking about her own experience as a wife
Mhm.
and with her husband, obviously. And she said they had a conversation about a bicycle. She said, let's say our marriage is a bicycle. Well, who's the front wheel and who's the back wheel? And then if you're the front wheel and I'm the back wheel, at some point the front wheel is going to need to, there's going to something going to happen to the front wheel. So we're going to need to change positions. And then the other one is going to now be the front wheel.
Mhm.
So Jamie's out of work. And let's just say his wife now has to try to find a job because he doesn't have one. So we need resources. So now she becomes the front wheel. So we
Mhm.
have some role changes going on here. So I said a lot, but hopefully that will sort of give a balance and at least some idea of some of the things that marriages are going through today.
Yeah, and you are absolutely right. For the most part, this is exactly what's been happening and in the midst of our family. So I look at marriages, especially during the pandemic, and I use this phrase when I talk to couples. I say, you have to understand something. As far as the science world is concerned, they are at war with COVID. The government is at war with COVID. So when it comes to family, we too have to realize that we need to be at war with COVID.
Hmm.
What's been happening is we've been at war with each other
Hmm.
instead of being at war with COVID. In other words, we need to attack the virus in the same way the government is trying to attack it, the science is
Hmm.
trying to attack it. We must have a strategy as a couple. We must come together as a family to decide how are we going to do what we need to do.
Hmm.
And it doesn't happen by accident. There has to be a plan. People have to communicate. We have to understand right now things are not the same. This is a different time. This is a different world with different expectations. And we have to understand this is also a very stressful time,
Hmm.
stressful for both, stressful for the kids who are, sometimes we tend to talk about the parents, but the kids are also highly stressed because now they too have to stay at home and they have to be homeschooled if they were not used to that. And they're wondering how long they're going to continue just sitting in front of a computer
Yeah.
to learn what they have to learn. So it takes tremendous pressure, puts a lot of pressure on the entire family. So this is why, again, it's important that as a family, we attack COVID as if COVID is the enemy. We are not the enemy. COVID is the enemy. Now there's a battle that we have to fight. How are we going to do it? And then begin to either develop some strategies or begin to look into books and articles and going online and resources and trying to figure out what's out there, what are couples doing out there. Facebook was really good with the pandemic. you know People started doing cooking lessons and you
Yeah.
name it. People started dancing and I mean there was all kind of stuff going on during the pandemic as a way of releasing the stress. So again, it's just figure out a way. What are we going to do as a family to attack this? And there's definitely many things that you can do.
Okay. So what would be the first step in the process of combating COVID together as a couple and not seeing each other as the virus?
I think it's imperative for you to understand that, um, to recognize the stressors, okay? And then once you recognize what's causing us to be so stressed, practice what I call, or better yet, just give each other a break. Okay. Again, like I said before, this is a stressful moment. The pandemic is a stressful experience that I don't care how good your relationship is, it's going to stress that relationship. It's going to test that
Yeah.
relationship.
Hmm.
How you respond to it, however, is it's important. So as couples, we have to look at this and say, okay, I understand that my wife is highly stressed because of X, Y, and Z. What can I do that can help to eliminate some of that stress? Or better yet, if there's some if it's something that's going on with her, maybe emotional stress, or it could be that she's the financial situation is causing a lot of stress and things like that. So there might be some things that are out of your control, but what you can do, however, is learn to give each other a break.
Yeah.
This is not the time to begin to pick on every little thing that she does or every little thing that he does, and start getting on, what we used to do back before COVID, and now we're doing it to each other during this time. This is a good time to learn to give each other some break. Take a break, take a moment to just say to yourself, you know what,
Yeah.
he's going through a lot right now. Let me just back off a little bit. Let me allow him to be. Let me allow him to make that mistake right now. Let me allow him to stay in bed a little bit longer right now. Let me allow him to watch TV a little bit longer for whatever reason. Figure out what's happening with your spouse and figure out what is your spouse doing as a coping mechanism to release some stress, and allow your spouse to do that, because to me that's very important. um Now, having said that, I think the second thing that is important to do is learn to take care of yourself. And when I say that, I mean the husband have to learn to take care of himself,
Hmm.
the wife has to learn to take care of herself. um During COVID time, you can't rely on your spouse to continue to do everything she used to do for you. You can't. It's too much. It's too
Yeah.
much. You're asking for too much. So learn to pick up yourself, and begin to do some things that you can do for yourself. People say, well, you know what? Um, if you practice self-care, well, it's selfish. Well, let me just say, self-care is not selfish. It's actually the opposite of that.
Absolutely.
um yeah, because selfish, the word selfish, by the way, it's interesting. Someone once says selfish is sin, is literally sin, when you try to take care of me, myself, and I, but me, myself, and I, without worrying about or caring about anyone else but yourself. That's not what we are asking here. We're not asking that you only take care of yourself, but we are asking is you learn to take care of yourself by doing what? Get enough sleep,
Yeah.
get some exercise, eat well, do your the daily basic things that are important in your life. It could be even reading a book. So there are some great books that are out there. Opening up the Bible and allow the Word of God to penetrate you. I
Yeah.
mean, COVID has given us so much time in our hands. People could sit there and memorize chapters of the Bible if they wanted to, right?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So use the time to regulate your stress, to decrease depression, to decrease the anxiety that you have. All of those things are important to do. So yes, you have to learn to take care of yourself. I don't know if you realize that, and it's important. When you are traveling, the flight attendant always tell you to do what? To secure your oxygen mask
First.
first before you can take care of your child. Even if you have a baby, even if you have a young toddler, they want you to secure your mask first, your oxygen mask. Why? Because if you can't breathe, you can't take care of your son. You can't take care of your daughter. You can't take care of your children. So it's the same way in your marriage. If you're not taking care of yourself emotionally, if you're not taking care of yourself financially, I mean, spiritually, if you're not taking care of yourself by doing your exercise and getting enough sleep and eating well and doing those things, you are going to be even more stressed. And then you're going to take that stress on the people that you love.
Absolutely. In the same way that I think we take care of our automobiles every 3,000 miles, we're always getting in, or whatever the car manufacturer's instruction says to get that oil and filter change. That's usually the surface stuff. And then there's that 10,000 or 20,000 mile, we have to go a little bit deeper and start
Yes.
changing spark plugs and things like that, and just lubricants and all of that stuff, that we need to do that on a regular basis for ourselves.
Hmm.
And because I think what we also find is, if you're not taking care of yourself first, then the breakdown physically is only going to add to the stress within the marriage.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now we're adding sickness on top of an already tense situation.
Hmm.
And I would say men are not as good at taking care of themselves when it comes to that kind of thing. Now, once I'm not making a broad brush statement, as
Hmm.
much as statistically, men don't necessarily go to, women will go get their annuals at least once a year or every other year. We get mammograms and all that kind of stuff, but men generally don't go to the doctor as often as they should.
Hmm.
And not to, because there's something wrong. Let's just make sure we keep everything right and get ahead of something that
Correct.
we can make sure that we're not going to run into, and now I'm trying to play catch up, when if we caught it early or before then, we would have had a little more wiggle room to handle a couple of things.
Hmm.
So I definitely concur to that aspect of taking care of ourselves physically, and what would be another way of sort of regaining that health in marriage.
Well, you can also learn to check your emotional state, or
Mm,
should I say, your anger level. Um, Check yourself. There are days I don't know why, and sometimes you wake up, from the moment you wake up, you're just not the same person who went to bed the night
mm-hmm,
before,
mm-hmm,
for whatever reason. Maybe it's the news that you listened to that morning, and you read something that morning that just didn't go well with you. You're just in a very moody way. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm,
So it's important that you check your emotional state, and doing so, you have to allow yourself to say, you know what, I'm really not my best today,
mm-hmm,
right? And find ways to calm yourself, especially if during that time your spouse wants to engage into a deep conversation. Find ways to really calm yourself. Drink some water, take some deep breath. Never underestimate the power of deep breathing.
mm,
um,
very true.
just today, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was telling me, take some time to breathe, because we so quick into jumping from one thing to another, to another, to another. Practice deep breathing, because when you do that, what's happening when you take deep breaths, right? You activate what they call the parasympathetic nervous system,
Okay.
which in a way conserves energy. It slows your heart rate. It relaxes the body. It allows you to become sexually aroused, allow the brain to think more clearly. So it's important that you do check your emotional state, because when you don't do that, you find yourself screaming at your partner, or
Mm,
screaming at the kids, or getting angry over little things that really shouldn't get you that angry.
mm-hmm.
And so doing that little exercise, with the deep breaths and drinking some water, and find ways to calm yourself, will eventually help your emotional state. Now, having said that, I think it's equally important that you know your partner's worth.
Mm.
Okay,
I
because
think you need to say that again. That's, yes.
it's very important that you really know your partner's worth. And what I mean knowing your partner's worth, sometimes we tend to value each other, and I mean we tend to value each other's contribution to the family
Mm,
rather than value the person itself,
wow.
which is completely
Wow.
different, right? And when you're dealing with highly stressful environment, when we come home and both of us are highly stressed, it's very important that to let your spouse understand that it's not her contribution that you care so much about, but you care about her.
Yeah.
You take the time to let her know that you appreciate her for who she is as a person, not just did she contribute today. let me give you an example, right? Earlier you mentioned how partners, we have reverse roles sometimes. Maybe the husband now is staying at home and the wife is the one working, right? Now, when she comes home, obviously the husband was home and making sure that the kids are on Zoom or doing their schoolwork or whatever. And, maybe he has, other things that he has to do around the house and why not. Um, but he's doing the best that he can,
Mhm.
right? When the wife comes home, she brings home the stress from work as well. So she's coming home with stress. The husband is at home, he's also dealing with stress. So both of them are equally stressed.
Mhm.
But if one comes home and look at the other one and say, well, you know what, you only had to stay home today, take care of the kids. I don't understand why the house look the way it does.
Mm.
You belittle the person when you do that. Or you just say, well, you know what, all you did today, you just went to an office and you were just working behind closed door. That's all you had to do. Me, I had to work, I had to clean, I had to do this, I had to do that. And so what we found is that we are having this conversation about the things that we do, our contribution to the family. And what's missing is we're not taking the time to say to each other, I appreciate you for who you are,
Yeah.
not just for what you contribute.
Yeah.
For you see, your relationship is only as good as each of you learn to take turns, help each other out,
Hmm.
and learn to also lean on each other. When
Yeah.
you value your partner, you are leaning, you are showing that, I can lean on you right now because, we have enough respect for each other. And so one of the verse that I truly value is Galatians 5:22 that talks about the fruit of the spirit.
Hmm.
Well, if you have the fruit of the spirit when you are at home with your spouse, you're gonna practice love. You're gonna practice joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control, so that the harmony at home it's something that is so soothing that the kids enjoy when the two of you are home, right?
Absolutely.
So it's
Absolutely.
not really a time that we judge each other's productivity, but a time to come to one another and show how much we appreciate the other person for who they are. Yeah, you can say, I appreciate you for doing X, Y, and Z, but it's even more important to say, I appreciate you for being who you are, for being the man that I married, for being the woman that I love.
It's interesting because it wasn't until you started going down the list of the fruits of the spirit that I caught practice self control,
Yeah, yeah.
practicing self control. And that's not a selfish thing.
Mm-mm.
That is taking the time to assess yourself,
Yeah.
where you are, getting a gauge, and then depending on where you are, obviously, you can say, Lord, okay, I'm really out of control here, or this is not, I'm not in a good place right now.
Hmm.
And there may be somebody watching tonight that doesn't have that faith element, but everyone has an internal thermometer about their emotions. Everyone does.
Hmm.
And whether you believe it's given from God or not, but there is still an internal mechanism that says, I think you really could have done that better,
Hmm.
or you could have approached that differently.
Hmm.
And I think following that internal thermometer and saying, okay, I'm going to step back, take some self inventory, put my mask on first, and making sure I'm okay so that those other tentacles of the fruits of the spirit can be exhibited and practiced by me and through me to others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It kind of remind me of I remember in high school, one of my teacher used to tell us that when we were doing algebra, to make sure to take the time to go back and check the equation
Mm.
just in case.
Mhm.
And so I've learned a long time ago that we need to learn to be humble.
Mm.
as husband and wife.
Yeah.
And when we are humble, then we can allow ourselves to go back and check that equation again. So that if I find myself while checking the equation that perhaps, Monday, you have said, you say something today that was really hurtful,
Mm.
that be humble enough to go back to say, you know what, I was wrong.
Yeah.
I really messed up today. I don't know what was going on in my mind, but for whatever, for what it's worth, and be genuine about it. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I hurt you. I'm sorry that I've said what I've said, but you have to be humble. And here you are, you mentioned we have to practice the self-control. That's part of being humble.
Hmm.
It requires being humble requires that I practice that self-control. And when I do messed up, to acknowledge to my spouse or to my children. Sometimes we okay to acknowledge it to each other, but not to the kids.
Yeah.
It's important for the kids to understand that as adults we can make mistakes, but when we do them and recognize we've done wrong, we can always go back to them and say, you know what, I did something wrong today, or I spoke with you, or I screamed at you, and I really didn't mean to do that, and I'm sorry. It's okay. So be humble, go back, find, locate what you have done that was wrong, locate your mistake you made with your spouse before you try to move forward. It's important to do that.
And the spiritual application of that is when it talks about when Jesus talks about bringing your alms, and if
Mhm.
you have ought one for another, before you even come and bring your gift, you have to
Yes.
make things right
Yes.
before you bring your gift to the altar. And I believe a lot of us, unfortunately, that are that I'm just making a blanket statement. This is not for everybody, but if when our marriages are in trouble, we think going to church and we try to, we're hiding everything and we're oh, how are you doing it? Oh, I'm blessed. I'm blessed. When inside you were just screaming at each other in the car.
Hmm.
And when honestly, that needs to be handled first
Hmm.
before you come in and handle and think you're going to present yourself before the Lord as a living sacrifice because you have not made things right with the person that you're living with.
Correct.
It seems to be, unfortunately, that we have more grace for people we don't know than we do
Mm.
for the own people within whom we dwell with.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so important. I have learned to piggyback on what you just mentioned with the screaming going on in the car, and then when people ask you know how you're doing and so forth, you just smile and say everything is great. I have learned that people are afraid to be vulnerable, because when you are vulnerable, you are taking a risk.
Hmm.
And if you take a risk and it's not well received, um, then you're in trouble.
Hmm.
If you understand what I mean.
Hmm.
If you share what's going on with your family to the wrong person, well, they might take that and run with it all over the church. So people are afraid to be vulnerable. And I have learned that vulnerability is actually a gift,
Hmm.
but you have to put it in the hand of someone that you can trust. So I do understand why sometimes that people, when you ask them how they're doing, depending on who they're speaking with, they might quickly say everything is great when things are not great, because if they could talk to you, would you be able to really keep it to yourself, or or encourage them in a way without being, um, um, without telling other people, this is what's going on with sister so and so forth. So it takes a lot. But I understand that, quite frankly, God wants us to be vulnerable. He wants us to be vulnerable with Him,
Hmm.
but He also wants us to be vulnerable with one another. As husband and wife, I have to be able to trust you,
Hmm.
to know that even when we are angry at each other, I can still trust you. Even when we are mad with each other, I can still trust that you have my best interest at heart.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's learning how to fight together, even though we may disagree, even though we may be angry at each other, but deep inside, I'm angry at you, but I know without any shadow of doubt that there is nothing you wouldn't do for me.
Okay.
And when people find that space where they feel that freedom to know that, I can count on my spouse, it encourages them to be vulnerable, right? And so with that, I want to add something else that I think also helped during this pandemic time. Take the time to encourage each other. The Bible says that your tongue, right? Our words are powerful,
Yeah.
powerful, right? Be careful what you say. I'm always saying that to myself, and I'm always hoping that my wife do that. Ask me, baby, does this dress make me look fat?
Oh
Okay,
my goodness.
because the words that you say
Yeah.
are powerful, right? The Bible says the tongue has the power of life and death. So, which means that I can breathe life into my wife, into
Yes.
my house. She
Yeah.
can breathe life into me. Take the time to nourish that. Take the time to encourage each other. And the encouragement can be a hug. The encouragement can be a simple gift. It can be a $5 you spend on buying her a flower or a piece of candy or whatever. It doesn't need to be something that you have to go in debt for, but show her that you appreciate her. Encourage her when you come home and you realize she's struggling with the kids. Well, this is not the time to say, well, you're doing it wrong. If
Mm.
I were here, the kids wouldn't act that way. No, this is the time to say, babe, I understand this is hard work. I don't know how you do it
Yeah.
day in and day out. I don't know how it's hard work. When you do that, you are boosting her. You are giving her what she needs so that she can continue on this journey. So you have to encourage your spouse, encourage her. And that's at every level,
Yeah.
whether it's something that she's trying to do, or whether it's something she's struggling with, or maybe it's something at work or whatever it is, and she comes in trying to share with you. Don't judge, encourage. Find words that can bring life into her, because she needs you. She needs to count on you at that particular time.
Absolutely. And what ways, particularly because men operate definitely on that level of encouragement.
Hmm.
So that's the octane that for their tank.
Hmm.
And obviously for the female, it's one of they love those like flowers or a card or just give me a hug. And but there's a little tension going on. But of all times, it's a lot of tension. But at night, then he wants to be affectionate.
Hmm.
I'm trying to be very discreet. um, how do we let him know that I'm really not prepared to connect with you?
Hmm.
We need to talk.
Hmm.
And as soon as you say we need to talk,
Hmm.
then it becomes from the man, oh, here we go. Never
Yeah.
mind, never mind. So how do you talk with men that this may even come up, or even if it's not shared with you in counseling or whatever, but it is something that's unspoken, to say no, don't take that as a negative as much as it is she. If you want her heart, you have to hear her heart.
Yes. So this is a very, very, very good question. And so this is the way I handle it. This is the way I try to help couples that I deal with. This is the way my wife and I try to deal with it. So we are all, and let me put it this way. We all have a movie that we are playing in our minds. Okay. So if I'm playing a movie in my mind, or if I'm playing a movie at this particular time, it's not right for you to come and interrupt me from watching my movie because you want me to watch your movie right now.
Mm,
What must take place is there's a permission that needs to take place. there's a question that must take place, and husband and wife can decide how to go about that. But what I usually tell them is the husband or the wife can say, honey, is this a good time for us to talk? And you say men don't like that word, the talk part, because one of the reasons is because men can only hear maybe the last two sentences at a time.
Oh, you know we have more than two sentences.
So that's the problem. And so we're going to have to really learn how to communicate differently than the way that we were taught growing up. If you want your husband to at least pay attention and listen to what you have to say, maybe one day I'll come back and we'll do a show on that because this is so significant. Because men can only hear a certain, can only obtain or keep only a certain amount of information.
Now, Monday, can I before you? Because I have to ask this, but I know for
Yes,
women that are watching, they're thinking, wait a minute.
yes.
So he can only take in so much information,
Hmm.
and I now have to condense all of my whole day into one or two sentences. But when it comes to something that he likes, he's got all the memory capacity of the in the world.
Yes, that is so true.
So,
Now, we are very strange creature, I have to admit. So here's what you do. Here's what you do. Remember the question you asked if during the nighttime, that's when he wants to be intimate. So you
mhm.
wanna, all right, let's just but the wife
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
no, this is not a good time. So what you may want to do is, I always say, always trying to figure out how you can eliminate bringing stuff into the bedroom. What I
Mm,
mean by that is bedtime shouldn't be a time where we're trying to fix
mm,
everything that happened during the day. We didn't talk to each other. We didn't articulate what was going on. We
mhm.
waited and waited and waited. And now we read the Bible, and the Bible said, don't let the sun
Sun
goes
go down.
down on
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
your
yeah. Uh-huh.
anger, right?
Yeah.
So you say, okay, well, in that case, I'm gonna have to keep my wife up all night until we resolve this. No, no. It's important that the two of you really, I mean, listen, if there's a friction going on between the two of you, we got to figure it out. We got to deal with it.
Mhm.
Because if we don't deal with it, then the bedroom is not going to be the ideal place to fix it. But the bedroom is supposed to be your oasis. Don't bring your bills into the bedroom. Don't bring
Mhm.
anything that's going to mess up the atmosphere. Leave that outside of the room. Fights and trying to deal with life's tension, solve that on the kitchen table, right? But when you do talk, um, like I say, there's a way you can communicate with each other where you say, is this a good time? The husband can tell you yes, or the husband or the wife can say, no, this is not a good time. I'm not in the mood. I don't want to talk about this right now, but we can talk about this tomorrow afternoon at 5. There's a schedule time that both of you now needs to respect. Now 5 o'clock comes, we turn off the TV, we sit somewhere where it's just the two of us, and then whoever decided that they wanted to talk begins the conversation. Now you begin the conversation not by saying, "Well, I want to talk to you because you have done this, and then let me tell you, the man just shuts you down. He's not listening to anything you say. But if you say, "This is what's happening," and you try to condense when you say this is what's happening, it's okay to say three sentences at a time. Say, yesterday during breakfast time, you say a word to me that was very hurtful, and I didn't appreciate you speaking to me that way in front of my children.
Mm.
Now your husband has to repeat what you say. Why? Because you want to make sure that he heard exactly what you say. So there's an exercise here that's taking place. And then he has to repeat what you say and then ask you, did I get it? And then now the wife or the husband can say, yes, you got it. But in addition to that, You also did this, or you did this, and you did that. And when you did those things, it made me feel this way. Now, the husband again has to repeat what the wife say, and then repeat the feelings that are attached
Mm,
to what she was going through.
mhm,
Because sometimes, again, when we are fighting at each other. We're not hearing one another.
mm,
So there are exercises, like I said, we can come back another time for this, but there are exercises that husband and wife can do to learn how to talk to each other so that they can be heard. So in that situation, if they have the skills to know how to communicate, then yes, maybe before everything is over, they might not be able to do, you know, the ultimate la la in
yeah.
bed that night, but maybe they might be able to hold each other that night. And that's enough. That's the first step. It may not be enough for the husband right now, but at least she's saying to her man, I hear you. I understand what's happening right now. I just need you to understand that I just need a little space.
Okay.
And when there's mutual respect, it's okay. And the same way, if the man was watching a football game or a basketball game or whatever, right now they don't want to be bothered by nothing.
Mhm.
Don't bother me. It's the same way with women. So again, communication is very, very important during that stage.
I like that point that you made about having the bedroom sort of be that off limits room for bringing stressors into it.
Hmm.
And I think, and I'm just going to be very transparent. I think I definitely want to put that into practice for my own home, because a lot of times we're thinking, okay, well, we're going to go to the bedroom because everything else is just noise. You know, the kids and things are going on, the dog is barking the whole 9 yards, and so let's go in here and we can talk. But we've made what should be a haven of just a place where we can decompress, spend
Correct.
time together, and everything. We've turned that into the boiler room
Yeah. Yeah.
instead of the
Don't
bedroom.
do that. Yeah. Don't
So
do
I'm just making a declaration that I'm going to not make my bedroom the boiler room
that. All
anymore.
right.
Yeah. So healing has taken place. Come on now.
Yes.
Somebody worship with me. Come on. Come on. Anyway.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, but I want to take a moment to let everybody know that once again, like if you have a question and you would like to ask Monday a question tonight, you can call in. We have a call in tonight show, 1-800-248-1384. That's 800-240-1384.
Mhm.
So what's the next uh, item on there to help to kind of
The
bring some
next
clarity?
item, and by no means do I, because I didn't put it first, by no means
I
it
know
was
exactly
a
where you're going.
level of.
Yep, I know.
I think it's important that as you deal with each other, that you learn that you are not alone. In other words, remember who's on your side. Um, Romans 14:8 tells us that if we live for the Lord, and if we die for the Lord. So whether we
Mm-hmm.
live or we die, we belong to the Lord. So
Mm-hmm.
what is that saying? Despite of everything that's going on with COVID, and the pain and the suffering that we may have to endure, and maybe we experience death in the family or someone that's close to us and so forth, we have to remember that at the end of the day, we are in God's hand. He is in every details of our lives. And that I need to remind my family that God is in control of everything, and that our lives is in his hand. And it just saying that takes so much stress away from, you're doing the mass, you're washing your hands, and you're doing all of those things
Mm-hmm.
to keep yourself safe. But knowing that God is on my side, that I have a shield, an invisible shield working with me every day, and no matter what happens, whether I live or I die. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's a very
Yeah.
strong statement.
Yeah.
Whether I live or I die. Listen, I tell people, listen, COVID does affect Christian just the same as non-Christian. We are not exempt to what COVID can do. I think the only difference is that if I do close my eyes, the Bible say I'm asleep.
Mm,
And that, that gives me a sense of peace.
mm,
Peace that other people may not understand,
yeah,
but it does give me that sense of peace. So dealing with COVID as a family, we have to always remember, rely on God's presence, that God is with us no matter what happens to this family, whether we are affected by COVID directly or indirectly, whether one of us gets sick and didn't come out on the other side, we are still in God's hand, that God is still in control of our lives, and that if I sleep in His hand.
yeah,
If I'm healed, I am healed in His hand. This here is not all there is. There's much more to us than just this little part of our lives here on
yeah.
earth. So it's important to remind ourselves that. And as you do that, we draw near to God. It's there's something about couples coming together. Once in a while, my wife will have me. She will read the Bible. She's reading the Bible, and then she said, "Babe, I want you to read it out loud."
Mm,
There's something beautiful about laying in bed and you are reading the Bible out loud, and we are going off of some of the stories that we read before and we heard before, and we say, "Oh, wait." And all of a sudden, the light is going on, and
yeah,
it's like, "Oh, I know we read this before, but I didn't think of it this way or that way." And drawing near to God within the Word, and as you draw near to Him, we also draw near to each other. Isn't it amazing how that happened?
that's the sweetness of the spirit.
Yeah, it brings you guys closer and closer together. Yeah, use the scripture, sing songs, pray with one another, speak words of encouragement. All of those things are important to do. Listen, this is not a step one, step two, step three, step four. You figure it out wherever you are in your relationship right now. Say, you know what? Perhaps this point right here is what we need. And focus on that. Focus on that. Bring your wife and say, babe, I just watched this video, I just watched this show, and I've learned this. What do you think of that? Don't just make the rules or change the rules because now you are educated. No,
Mm,
no.
yeah,
Bring her in. Allow her to make decision with you. Don't make decision for her. Allow her to understand what you just watched
yeah.
and get some feedback from her. And then the two of you now can come together and say, you know what? Let's see how this works. Let's practice these steps and let's practice that step. Let's do it for a week and see what happens.
I'm Monty. This has been an incredible program, and I'm just so grateful to have you on tonight. And want to take this opportunity once again. So, if anyone has a question they'd like to ask Monty directly, then you can call into the show 800-240-1384. That's 800-240-1384. And if you may be a little apprehensive about calling in with a question, you can reach Monday at the Candor Consulting Firm, counseling firm,
Mhm.
and no, it's consulting. And
Consulting firm, yeah.
that way you can also be in contact with Monday there, as well as the other wonderful clinicians there at the firm that is founded by CEO Armina Domingue.
Mhm.
So, Monday, I would love to have you back on the program to talk about some of those reparative steps.
Anytime. Anytime.
So yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So we will be talking about that. And right now, um, just want to let everybody know next week we've got a wonderful program on Monday. We have New Music Monday with a brand new artist with a new EP that is coming out that just released. So you want to be here on Monday at 8 p.m. live here on the Indigo Worship Live Show. And we've got some amazing, amazing things coming up. Um, also want to let you know that guess what? Indigo Worship now has an apparel line and it's called Shop Indigo. And every proceeds from every piece of the apparel goes to support missions around the world. So please take a look at our shop. It's called www.shop Indigo, and you'll find shirts and hats and all kinds of things. And like I said, all portion of those proceeds go towards well drilling in places that are in need of fresh water. And we're also doing things with youth programs initiatives around the world as well. So please support that. Just came up and we're live and running as of Monday. So I'm real excited about that. You're going to be hearing more about what's going on. Also, you're going to mark your calendars for April the 25th because we are now having a virtual music conference. Indigo Worship and Merge Music Group are coming together to have a music conference, a virtual music conference, and you will not want to miss the lineup of speakers and workshops. So you'll hear more information about that this coming week, and I'm excited about that. So Monday, before we sign off tonight, what closing remarks would you like to make?
Well, first of all, I just want to say, Patrice, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for allowing me to be part of the show today. I had a blast. It was wonderful to be here. And also, if you want to reach out to me, again, you can go to Kendall Consulting Firm .com, and all the information is on the website. If you want counseling, marriage counseling, we have a team, dedicated team with Amina Domingue as our leader, that we can help. But you can also, for if you are experiencing domestic violence here in the United States, or there's a hotline you can always call, is 1-800-799 SAFE, or 1-800-799-7233. Or you can go online to thehotline.org/help. So seek out help if necessary. Reach out to someone. You are not alone. There are qualified Christian counselors out there who share your values about marriages, about marriage, wonderful therapists who can offer you the help that you need. So thank you again. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you so much for being here. And to everyone that's joined us tonight, we will be back next Wednesday at 8 p.m. with a new Wellness Wednesday, and we'll let you know who's going to be on next week. It could be Monday. You'll never know. But anyway, stay tuned. And as well, always follow us here on the Indigo Worship Live Show. You can also share this live after the broadcast tonight, and it will be also going live tonight on YouTube as well on our Indigo Worship Live Show YouTube channel. So thank you so much. Follow us on Instagram at official Indigo Worship. And to everyone, God bless you. Monday, thank you so much. Have a wonderful and amazing night, guys. We'll see you next week. Once again, as always, it's not just a vibe here, baby. It's a whole mood. Have a good night.
Bye bye.
All right.